Daniel Cole had been stranded on the planet for 3 months. His transport ship had crashed in the mountains, and he was the only survivor. The people had found him wandering through their forests, half-starved and delirious from dehydration. They could have killed him. Most species in the galaxy would have killed a strange alien found on their world. But they were not most species. They brought him to their capital city and let him live among them, though they watched him with suspicion in their compound eyes. There were beings, tall and slender with 4 arms and wings that shimmered like oil on water. Their queen ruled from a palace of crystal and stone in the heart of Sara, and Daniel had seen her only once, from a distance, when she addressed her people from her balcony. She was beautiful in a way he could not explain. Her wings caught the light and scattered it into rainbows, and her eyes shifted from blue to gold as she spoke. He remembered thinking that she looked kind, which was a strange thing to notice about an alien queen. Daniel survived by doing work that no one wanted to do. He carried heavy loads. He cleaned the market stalls. He helped the farmers in the fields outside the city walls. The work was hard, but it kept him fed and gave him a place to sleep. He kept his head down and tried not to cause trouble. He was a guest on this world, and he knew that guests who caused problems did not stay guests for long. The attack came on a morning like any other. Daniel was walking through the garden district when he heard the screaming. He looked up and saw smoke rising from the eastern quarter of the city. Then he heard the horns, deep and rumbling, the sound of war. People ran past him in panic. Guards rushed toward the smoke with weapons drawn. Daniel pressed himself against a wall and tried to stay out of the way. He should have run. He should have found a place to hide and waited for the fighting to end. That would have been the smart thing to do, but then he saw her. Queen was in the garden, surrounded by 3 of her guards. They were trying to escort her back to the palace, but rebel soldiers had cut off their path. Daniel counted 8 rebels, each one armed with a curved blade and a bow. The guards fought bravely, but they were outnumbered. One fell with an arrow in his throat, then another. The 3rd guard stood alone between the queen and her enemies. Daniel did not think, he simply moved. He grabbed a fallen guard's weapon, a short spear with a blade at each end, and charged into the fight. The rebels did not see him coming. He was just a human, a soft and fragile thing, not worth their attention. That was their mistake. Daniel had been a soldier on Earth before he became a spacer. He had trained for years to fight in conditions that would kill most beings in the galaxy. Earth was a death world, and it bred warriors who did not know when to quit. He killed 2 rebels before they understood what was happening. The 3rd one turned to face him, and Daniel drove the spear through his chest. The remaining 5 backed away, suddenly uncertain. The lone guard used the moment to pull the queen toward a side passage. Then the arrows came. The first one hit Daniel in the shoulder. He stumbled but did not fall. The second one struck his side, and he felt the cold burn of poison spreading through his blood. The 3rd arrow was aimed at the queen. Daniel saw it coming. He threw himself in front of her and felt the arrow punch through his back. He fell to his knees. The world was spinning. The poison was doing something terrible to his insides, twisting his muscles and clouding his vision. He looked up and saw the queen staring at him with her golden eyes. She looked confused. She looked afraid, not for herself but for him. More guards arrived. They drove the rebels back with a fury that shook the ground. Daniel tried to stand, but his legs would not obey him. He collapsed onto the stone path and watched the sky spin above him. The queen's face appeared in his vision. She was saying something, but he could not hear the words. Everything was fading into darkness. The last thing he felt was her hand on his face, cool and gentle, like water on a burn. Daniel woke in a place he did not recognize. The ceiling above him was made of pale blue stone, and strange lights floated in the air like fireflies. He tried to move, but his body screamed in protest. The arrows were gone, but the wounds remained, wrapped in bandages that smelled of herbs he could not name. A healer stood beside his bed, studying him with wide, compound eyes. She was smaller than most he had seen, with delicate wings folded against her back. She made a clicking sound with her mandibles, which Daniel had learned was the way of expressing surprise. "You should be dead," she said. Her voice was soft and musical like wind through chimes. "The poison on those arrows kills our kind in moments. Your body is fighting it. I have never seen anything like this." Daniel tried to speak, but his throat was too dry. The healer brought him water, and he drank until the cup was empty. "The queen," he managed to say, "is she safe?" The healer studied him again with that same look of surprise. "You nearly died protecting her, and your first question is about her safety. You are a strange creature, human." "Is she safe?" Daniel asked again. "She is unharmed because of you." Daniel closed his eyes and let out a breath he did not know he was holding. The pain was still there, burning through every nerve in his body, but it did not matter. The queen was alive. He had done something right. The healer left him alone to rest, but sleep would not come. Daniel lay in the darkness and listened to the distant sounds of the city. The fighting had stopped, but he could hear voices raised in anger and fear. The rebels had been driven back, but they had not been defeated. This was not over. He did not know why he had risked his life for an alien queen he had never met. He did not know why her safety mattered to him more than his own. But he knew, deep in his bones, that he would do it again. Some things were worth the pain. Some people were worth protecting. The door opened, and light spilled into the room. Daniel turned his head and saw Queen standing in the doorway. Her wings caught the light and scattered it across the walls like shattered glass. Her eyes were the color of sunset, and they were fixed on him with an intensity that made his heart beat faster. "You saved my life," she said. "I want to know why." Daniel looked at her for a long moment. Then he spoke the only truth he knew. "Because it was the right thing to do." Queen did not leave after Daniel answered her question. She stood in the doorway for a long moment, her golden eyes searching his face as if looking for something she could not name. Then she stepped inside and closed the door behind her. She moved to a chair beside his bed and sat down, folding her forearms in her lap with a grace that seemed impossible for a creature with so many limbs. "My advisors think you are a spy," she said. "They believe the rebels sent you to gain my trust. They want me to have you executed." Daniel tried to sit up, but the pain in his side forced him back down. "And what do you think?" "I think a spy would not take 3 poisoned arrows for someone he was planning to betray." The queen tilted her head, studying him. "I think you are something else entirely. I just do not know what." Daniel let out a weak laugh that turned into a cough. "I am just a man who was in the wrong place at the wrong time, or maybe the right place. I have not decided yet." The queen's mandibles clicked softly, and Daniel recognized the sound as amusement. "You are strange, human. My people believe your kind are primitive and dangerous. They say you come from a world of death, where everything is trying to kill everything else. They say humans are violent by nature." "They are not wrong," Daniel admitted. "Earth is dangerous, and humans have done terrible things to each other throughout our history. But we have also done great things. We have learned that the strongest among us are not those who take, but those who protect. That is what I believe anyway." The queen was silent for a moment. Then she leaned forward, and her voice dropped to something almost like a whisper. "Commander Vex leads the rebels. He was once my most trusted general. He believes I am too soft, that I have weakened our people by seeking peace with other species instead of conquest. He will not stop until I am dead or exiled." "Then you need to stop him first." "I know, but my forces are scattered, and many of my guards were killed in the attack. Vex has been building his army for years in secret. I was a fool not to see it." Daniel forced himself to sit up despite the pain. He looked the queen in the eyes and spoke with a conviction that surprised even himself. "You are not a fool. You are a leader who chose peace over war. That is not weakness. That is strength. And you can still win this fight." The queen studied him with those shifting golden eyes. "You speak as if you intend to help me." "I do." Why, this is not your world. This is not your fight. You could leave, find a ship, return to your own people. Why would you stay and risk your life again for a queen you do not know? Daniel thought about the question. He thought about his life before, the years of wandering from planet to planet, taking jobs on ships that were always going somewhere else. He thought about the loneliness that had become so familiar he had stopped noticing it. And he thought about the moment in the garden when he had seen the queen surrounded by enemies, and something inside him had simply known what he had to do. Because I have been running for a long time, he said, running from place to place, never belonging anywhere. But when I saw you in that garden, when I saw those soldiers trying to hurt you, I did not think about running. I thought about protecting, and that felt more right than anything has felt in years. The queen did not respond immediately. She looked at him with an expression he could not read. Then she stood and moved to the door. She paused with her hand on the handle. The healers say you will recover in a few days. When you are strong enough, come to the throne room. I will make you my personal guard. You will stand at my side during the peace negotiations with Commander Vex. Daniel blinked. Peace negotiations, after he tried to kill you. He has sent a message demanding that I meet him at the Temple of Ancestors to discuss terms. If I refuse, he will burn the city. I must go. It is a trap. I know, that is why I need someone I can trust to watch my back. She looked at him over her shoulder. Can I trust you, Daniel Cole? Daniel held her gaze. Yes. The queen nodded once, then left the room. Daniel lay back against his pillow and stared at the ceiling. He had just promised to protect an alien queen against an army of rebels who wanted her dead. He was wounded, alone on a strange world, and probably walking into a situation that would get him killed. And yet he smiled. 3 days passed. The healers worked on Daniel constantly, using medicines and techniques he did not understand. The poison had done damage to his organs, but his human body fought back with a stubbornness that amazed the physicians. By the 2nd day, he could walk. By the 3rd day, he could fight. They gave him armor made of a dark metal that was lighter than anything he had ever worn. It had been modified to fit his human frame, and it moved with him like a second skin. They gave him weapons too, a pair of curved blades that felt natural in his hands. On the morning of the 4th day, Daniel walked into the throne room and stood before the queen. She sat on a throne of crystal that caught the light and scattered it across the walls. Her wings were folded behind her, and her eyes were the deep blue of a calm ocean. She looked at him, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. "You look better," she said finally. "I feel better, ready to do my job." The queen rose from her throne and descended the steps to stand before him. She was taller than him by half a head, and her presence filled the room like a force of nature. She reached out with one of her hands and touched the armor over his heart. "This belonged to my brother," she said softly. "He died defending me when I was young. I never thought I would give it to another, but something tells me he would approve of you wearing it." Daniel felt the weight of her words. He bowed his head slightly. "I will honor his memory." "I know you will." The queen stepped back and looked at him with eyes that had shifted to a warm amber. "The negotiations are tomorrow. Whatever happens, stay close to me. I have a feeling that Commander Vex has something terrible planned." Daniel nodded. "I will not leave your side." The queen smiled, and for a moment she did not look like a ruler burdened by war. She looked like a person who had found something unexpected in a dark time, something like hope. "Then let us go and face whatever comes together." The Temple of Ancestors stood on a hill outside the city walls. It was an ancient place, built long before the current queen was born, and it was considered sacred ground by all. No blood had ever been spilled within its walls. That was the tradition. That was the law. Daniel did not trust it for a moment. They traveled to the temple in a small procession. The queen rode in a covered transport, and Daniel walked beside it with 6 guards. The guards did not trust him. He could see it in the way they watched him, the way their hands stayed close to their weapons. They had been told to accept him, but acceptance did not come easy to soldiers who had spent their lives protecting their queen from outsiders. Daniel understood their suspicion. He would have felt the same way, but he did not let it bother him. His focus was on the queen, on the temple ahead, and on the danger that waited for them there. The temple was beautiful in a haunting way. Its walls were made of white stone that seemed to glow in the morning light. Its towers reached toward the sky like fingers grasping at the clouds. Carvings covered every surface, images of ancestors who had lived and died long ago. It should have been a place of peace, but Daniel could feel the tension in the air like electricity before a storm. Commander Vex was waiting for them at the temple entrance. He was a large, bigger than any Daniel had seen, with scars covering his face and arms. His wings were torn and ragged, and his eyes were the color of dried blood. He looked at the queen with contempt and at Daniel with something worse. "You bring a human to sacred ground," Vex said. His voice was deep and rough like stones grinding together. "Is this how far you have fallen, hiding behind a primitive beast?" The queen stepped forward, her posture straight and proud. "Daniel Cole saved my life when your assassins tried to murder me in my own garden. He has earned his place at my side." Vex laughed, a harsh and ugly sound. "Earned his place, like a pet that has learned a trick. Tell me, human, does she give you treats when you perform well?" Daniel did not rise to the bait. He kept his eyes on Vex and his hands away from his weapons. He counted the rebel soldiers visible around the temple, 12 on the ground, more in the towers. He looked at the windows and saw the glint of metal. Archers, at least 20 of them hidden in the shadows. It was worse than he had feared. The queen spoke calmly. "I am here to discuss peace, Vex. I am willing to offer reforms. I am willing to share power with a council that represents your followers. I am even willing to pardon those who took up arms against me. But I will not abandon my throne, and I will not abandon my people." Vex stepped closer, his face twisted into something like a smile. "You still do not understand, do you? I do not want peace. I do not want reforms. I want you gone. I want your bloodline erased from history. I want to build a new one that does not bow to soft ideals and weaker species." He raised his hand, and Daniel saw the signal for what it was. "Get down," Daniel shouted. He threw himself at the queen and tackled her to the ground as the first volley of arrows flew through the air. The guards were not as fast. 3 of them fell in the first second, arrows buried in their chests and throats. The remaining 3 tried to form a shield around the queen, but there were too many arrows coming from too many directions. Daniel covered the queen with his body as arrows struck the ground around them. One hit his back, piercing the armor and digging into his flesh. He grunted but did not move. Another arrow struck his leg. A third hit his shoulder. He could feel the poison burning through his veins, but he did not let go of the queen. The guards were dying. He could hear their screams, their bodies hitting the ground. He looked up and saw Vex walking toward them, a blade in his hand, his bloody eyes fixed on the queen. "Move, human," Vex said. "Your death will be quick. I cannot say the same for hers." Daniel rose to his feet. His body was screaming at him to stay down, to give up, to let the poison take him. But he had made a promise. He had said he would not leave her side, and Daniel Cole did not break his promises. He drew his blades and stood between Vex and the queen. Vex stopped. For the first time, something like surprise flickered across his face. "You can barely stand. You have enough poison in your blood to kill 10, and still you fight." "I will fight until I cannot move," Daniel said. His voice was steady, even though his legs were shaking. "And even then I will crawl." Vex stared at him for a long moment. Then he laughed, that same harsh and ugly sound. "Humans truly are insane. Very well, die on your feet if that is what you wish." He raised his blade and charged. Daniel met him with everything he had left. Their weapons clashed, and the force of the impact nearly knocked Daniel off his feet. Vex was stronger, faster, and uninjured. Daniel was dying on his feet, but he had something Vex did not have. He had a reason to keep fighting that was bigger than himself. He blocked a strike that would have taken his head. He dodged a thrust aimed at his heart. He landed a cut on Vex's arm that made the commander hiss in pain, but he was slowing down. The poison was spreading. His vision was going dark at the edges. Then he saw an opening, a gap in Vex's guard, just for a moment. Daniel lunged forward and drove his blade into the commander's side. Vex roared in rage and backhanded Daniel across the face. Daniel flew backward and hit the ground hard. He tried to get up, but his body would not obey. He could only watch as Vex pulled the blade from his side and turned toward the queen. But the queen was not where she had been. She was standing, wings spread, eyes blazing with a golden fire, and in her hands she held one of Daniel's fallen blades. "You want me, Vex," she said, "then come and take me yourself." Daniel smiled as darkness took him. He had done his part. Now it was her turn. Daniel woke to the sound of water dripping somewhere in the darkness. His body felt like it had been torn apart and put back together wrong. Every breath sent fire through his lungs. Every heartbeat pounded in his skull like a drum. But he was alive. Somehow, against all odds, he was still alive. He opened his eyes and saw stone walls lit by the soft glow of bioluminescent moss. He was lying on a makeshift bed of cloth and leaves. His wounds had been bandaged again, though the bandages were crude compared to the ones the royal healers had used. The air smelled of damp earth and old stone. "You are awake." The voice came from beside him. Daniel turned his head and saw Queen sitting on a rock, her wings folded against her back, her eyes watching him with a mix of relief and concern. She looked tired. There were scratches on her arms and face, and her royal robes were torn and stained with dirt. "Where are we?" Daniel asked. His voice came out as a rough whisper. "The tunnels beneath the city. They were built by my ancestors centuries ago as an escape route. I used to explore them when I was young. I never thought I would need them for their intended purpose." Daniel tried to sit up, but the queen placed a hand on his chest and gently pushed him back down. "Rest. You lost a lot of blood. The arrows carried enough poison to kill a dozen of my kind. The fact that you are still breathing is nothing short of a miracle." "Vex, what happened to Vex?" The queen's expression darkened. "He lives. I wounded him, but his soldiers pulled him to safety before I could finish the fight. They retreated to the palace. He controls the city now." Daniel closed his eyes. He had failed. He had promised to protect her, and he had failed. Vex was still alive, and the queen was hiding in tunnels like a fugitive in her own kingdom. "I am sorry," he said. "Sorry?" The queen's voice was sharp with disbelief. "You took 7 arrows for me. You fought a commander twice your size while poison was eating through your blood. You gave me the chance to escape when everyone else was dead. What could you possibly be sorry for?" "I could not stop him." The queen was quiet for a moment. Then she did something unexpected. She laughed. It was a soft sound, tired and sad but real. "Daniel Cole, you are the strangest creature I have ever met. You nearly died protecting me, and you apologize because you did not do more. My own guards, soldiers trained from birth to give their lives for me, did not fight with half your determination. And you think you failed." Daniel opened his eyes and looked at her. In the dim light of the tunnel, she seemed almost fragile, like a creature made of glass and light. But there was steel in her eyes, a strength that had nothing to do with size or power. She had stood her ground against Vex when everyone else had fallen. She had picked up a blade and fought for herself. That was not the act of a weak ruler. "You were impressive back there," he said. "When you faced Vex, I did not know you could fight like that." "Neither did I." The queen looked down at her hands. "I have always been taught that queens do not fight, that our strength lies in wisdom and diplomacy, not violence. But when I saw you fall, when I thought you were dead, something changed inside me. I felt rage like I have never felt before, and I understood for the first time why you do what you do." "What do you mean?" "The desire to protect, to stand between someone you care about and the thing that threatens them, to be willing to suffer if it means they survive." She met his eyes. "You feel that for me. I do not understand why, but I know it is true, and in that moment at the temple I felt it for you." Daniel did not know what to say. He had spent years alone, keeping people at a distance, never letting anyone close enough to matter. It was safer that way. You could not lose what you never had. But somewhere along the way, this alien queen had slipped past his defenses. She had become someone he cared about, someone he would die for without hesitation. And apparently, she felt the same way. "We should keep moving," the queen said, breaking the silence. "There is a loyalist camp on the edge of the city. General Myra commands the remaining royal forces there. If we can reach her, we might have a chance to take back what we have lost." Daniel forced himself to sit up despite the pain. "Then let us go." "You can barely walk." "Then I will lean on you." He managed a weak smile. "Unless you have a problem carrying a primitive beast through your tunnels." The queen's mandibles clicked in amusement. "I suppose I can manage." They moved through the tunnel slowly. Daniel leaned on the queen for support, and she guided him through passages that twisted and turned in the darkness. She told him about her childhood, about the hours she had spent exploring these tunnels to escape the pressures of royal life. She told him about her parents, about the burden of leadership that had fallen on her shoulders when she was too young to understand what it meant. She told him about her dreams of a world where her people did not have to fear war or conquest. Daniel listened. He told her about Earth, about the oceans and mountains and forests of his home world. He told her about the wars humanity had fought against itself, and the lessons they had learned from centuries of bloodshed. He told her that peace was possible, but it had to be earned through sacrifice and determination. "You speak as if you know what it takes to build peace," the queen said. "I know what it costs to destroy it. Maybe that is close enough." They walked in silence for a while after that. Then, ahead of them, Daniel saw light. Real light, not the glow of moss, but the golden light of the sun filtering through a crack in the tunnel ceiling. And then he heard voices, voices speaking in low and urgent tones. The queen tensed. "Rebel scouts, they must be searching the tunnels for us." Daniel looked around. There was nowhere to hide. The tunnel stretched straight in both directions with no side passages. They were trapped. "How many?" he asked. "I count 3 voices, maybe 4. Daniel let go of the queen and drew his blade. His hands were shaking, and his vision swam with every movement. But he planted his feet and faced the direction of the voices. "Get behind me," he said. "Daniel, you can barely stand." "Then I will fall on them and take at least one down with me. Get behind me." The queen stared at him. Then slowly she moved behind him. But she did not stay there. She picked up a loose stone from the tunnel floor and held it ready. "If we die here," she said, "we die together." Daniel smiled, agreed. The rebel scouts came around the corner. There were 4 of them, armed with blades and bows. They saw Daniel and the queen, and their eyes went wide with shock and then with greed. Daniel attacked before they could react. He was slow and weak, but he was also desperate and determined. He killed the first scout with a thrust through the heart. The second one fell to a slash across the throat. The third one raised his bow, but the queen threw her stone and struck him in the face, giving Daniel time to close the distance and finish him. The fourth scout turned and ran. Daniel collapsed against the tunnel wall, breathing hard. The queen knelt beside him and pressed her hands against a wound that had reopened on his side. "You impossible human," she whispered. "What am I going to do with you?" "Keep me around," Daniel said. "I am starting to grow on you." The queen laughed despite everything. And in that dark tunnel surrounded by enemies, That laugh sounded like hope. They reached the Loyalist camp as the sun was setting. General Myra met them at the entrance, a battle hardened with gray wings and eyes that had seen too much war. She embraced the queen like a mother embracing a lost child, then turned her gaze to Daniel with suspicion and curiosity in equal measure. "So this is the human," Myra said, "the one who took arrows for our queen." "He did more than that," Queen replied. "He gave me hope when I had none left, and he fought beside me when everyone else had fallen." Myra studied Daniel for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "Anyone who bleeds for our queen is welcome in my camp. Get him to the healers. He looks like death walking." Daniel wanted to argue, to say he was fine, but his body chose that moment to give out completely. He collapsed, and the last thing he saw before darkness took him was the queen reaching for him with fear in her golden eyes. He dreamed of Earth. He dreamed of green fields and blue skies and the sound of rain on a roof. He dreamed of a home he had not seen in years, a place he had left behind because he thought there was nothing there for him. But in the dream, he was not alone. The queen was there, standing beside him, looking at the sky with wonder in her eyes. She turned to him and smiled, and the smile was warmer than any sun. When he woke, he was in a tent surrounded by medical equipment he did not recognize. His wounds had been treated properly this time, with advanced medicine that had purged the last of the poison from his blood. He felt weak but clear, like a fever had finally broken. The queen was asleep in a chair beside his bed. She had not changed her torn robes, and her face was still marked with scratches and exhaustion, but she was there. She had stayed with him through the night. Daniel watched her sleep for a moment. Then he reached out and gently touched her hand. Her eyes opened instantly, shifting from blue to gold as they focused on him. For a moment, she just stared. Then her expression softened into something like relief. "You are awake," she said. "You stayed." "Of course I stayed. You nearly died saving my life. The least I could do was be here when you woke." Daniel smiled. "The least you could do was rest. You look terrible." The queen's mandibles clicked in what he now recognized as a laugh. "And you look like you fought an army single-handed, which, I suppose, you did." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then the queen straightened in her chair, and her expression became serious. "Myra has gathered our remaining forces. We have enough soldiers to attempt a counterattack, but it will be dangerous. Vex has fortified the palace and filled it with his best fighters. If we fail, there will be no second chance." "Then we do not fail." "Daniel, you have done enough, more than enough. No one would blame you if you sat this battle out." Daniel pushed himself up despite the pain. He met the queen's eyes with a steady gaze. "I told you I would not leave your side. I meant it. Where you go, I go. That is not changing now." The queen looked at him for a long moment. Then she reached out and took his hand in hers. Her touch was cool and gentle, and it sent a warmth through Daniel that had nothing to do with fever. "When this is over," she said softly, "when Vex is defeated and my kingdom is restored, I want you to stay. Not as a guard, not as a servant, but as someone who belongs here, someone who has a home." Daniel felt something crack inside him, a wall he had built over years of loneliness and wandering. He had told himself he did not need a home, that he was better off alone. But that was a lie. He had always been looking for somewhere to belong. He had just never found it. Until now. "I would like that," he said. The battle came at dawn. Daniel stood with the queen at the head of the Loyalist army as they approached the palace. His body was still healing, but he had refused to stay behind. This was the end, one way or another, and he intended to see it through. They breached the outer walls within the first hour. The fighting was brutal, close-quarters combat in hallways and chambers that echoed with the clash of weapons and the screams of the wounded. Daniel fought beside the queen, covering her back as she led her soldiers deeper into the palace. They found Vex in the throne room. The commander was waiting for them, surrounded by his elite guard. His wound from the temple had been bandaged, but he moved with the same deadly grace as before, his bloody eyes fixed on the queen with hatred that burned like fire. "You should have stayed hidden," Vex said. "I would have hunted you down eventually, but at least you would have had a few more days of life." "I am done hiding," the queen replied. "This ends now." The final battle was chaos. Loyalist soldiers clashed with rebel guards while Daniel and the queen fought their way toward Vex. Daniel took more wounds, cuts, and bruises that added to the scars he had already earned. But he did not slow down. He did not stop. They reached Vex together. The commander faced them with a blade in each hand and murder in his eyes. "Two against one," Vex said. "How brave of you." "You had no problem attacking me with an army," the queen replied. "Consider this a lesson in fairness." They attacked together, human and queen moving in perfect sync as if they had trained together for years. Vex was a masterful fighter, but he could not defend against both of them at once. Daniel drew his attention with aggressive strikes while the queen exploited every opening he created. Then Vex saw his chance. He deflected one of Daniel's attacks and thrust his blade toward the queen's heart. Daniel did not think, he moved. The blade meant for the queen pierced his shoulder instead. Daniel gasped but grabbed Vex's arm, holding him in place despite the agony. "Now," he said through gritted teeth. The queen did not hesitate. She drove her blade through Vex's chest. The commander's eyes went wide with shock, then dimmed as the life left his body. He collapsed to the floor and the throne room fell silent. The rebels surrendered, the fighting stopped, the war was over. Daniel sat on the steps of the throne as the healers worked on his wound. The queen stood above him, addressing her soldiers and her people with words of gratitude and hope. She spoke of rebuilding, of peace, of a new future for. Then she turned to Daniel and extended her hand. "Rise," she said, "you have earned this moment." Daniel took her hand and let her pull him to his feet. He stood beside her on the steps of the throne, a human among aliens, battered and bleeding but standing tall. "Daniel Cole," the queen announced to the gathered crowd. "This human saved my life. He stood against our enemies when no one else could. He bled for as if it were his own home. Today I name him a citizen of our world with all the rights and honors that title carries. He is no longer a stranger among us. He is one of us." The crowd erupted in cheers. Daniel looked out at the sea of faces and felt something he had not felt in years: belonging, home. The queen leaned close to him, her voice meant only for his ears. "I hope the reward was worth the pain." Daniel looked at her, at the warmth in her golden eyes, at the future that stretched out before them like an unwritten story. He thought about the arrows, the poison, the wounds that would leave scars for the rest of his life. Then he smiled. "It was worth every arrow," he said, "and I would endure them all again." The queen smiled back, and in that moment, surrounded by cheering soldiers and the ruins of a war finally ended, Daniel Cole knew he had found something he never expected to find. A purpose, a people, a home, and a queen worth dying for.